Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale, and this week we have swapped out James Galizio, who will be missing in return for getting Adam back on the podcast. So joining me, we've got Adam Vitale.
Hello.
We've also got Josh Torres.
Nice trade. Welcome back, Adam. Thank God. Just kidding.
Wow. Savage.
And Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
So this is what we plan to have as our, I believe, second to last regular episode of the Tetracast for this year. We'll be recording this weekend and likely next weekend. And then it likely won't be published until the very end of the year or early next. But following that will be our big Game of the Year podcast as the regular podcast takes a short break for the holidays. We're in December now, so that we all kind of knows what that means. We're scrambling to get our list finalized. We've got the Game Awards to look forward to next week, whether it's for the awards themselves or hopefully looking forward to some neat announcements. We'll be obviously talking about that next week if anything cool or interesting comes out of that. We've obviously got the big Final Fantasy XIV expansion that just launched, and people, I assume, are either playing or waiting to play. Maybe that's where James at. Maybe that's what Chow's doing. And so many.
I can tell you, just if you want to queue for this game, it'll take you 90 minutes to get in on average. So
that's not bad. 90 minutes isn't bad.
Is it not bad? There's so many other games you could play for those.
There is one problem though. If you AFK and sometimes the game will kick you out, if you don't get in that immediately, you'll lose your queue position. So that
wait, but like, why would you AFK? Why if you finally get in, why would you like? All right, I would.
No, because you're all tab saying that you're queuing, right? So people will be like, yeah.
So if you're not keeping an eye on your queue position,
yeah, because the game will crash from unexpected lobby error or something like that. It's called the 2002 error for some reason, right?
So Chow, out of all the time that you've attempted to play, like, what is your ratio of actual play time versus queue time right now?
50-50. I played about 3 hours, I think, of the expansion.
50-50. That's not bad. Maybe
spent 3 hours in queue.
So obviously talking about the content of Endwalker, we're likely going to table that because obviously it just came out. It won't be in consideration for our end of the year's talk. MMOs take a long time to kind of chew through in general. So I'm guessing once we reconvene the podcast early 2022, we'll get James and Chow and maybe some others to kind of talk about their experience as they play it over the next coming months. In the meantime, we obviously spent a lot of last week kind of going over some final thoughts on some November releases, namely Shin Megami Tensei, Ruined King, and Pokemon. And I know that some of us are still working through those, and some of us are putting those off for later just because we can't squeeze in everything for the year. This week's going to be a bit of the same, just kind of what people are trying to dip their toes into or wrap up as we get into the end of the year. One of the games that kind of released under the radar, it is a remaster, so maybe not surprisingly, that I know Adam has actually put a lot of time into, is one of the Final Fantasy pixel remasters, which have obviously been doled out through the year. And that is the Final Fantasy V pixel remaster. Now, I do know that we talked about Final Fantasy V way back earlier in the year when James was playing through it, but I do kind of also want to hear Adam's take specifically about his, impressions on the remaster itself, because it is kind of like an underserved game. I feel like here in the West, it feels like it's kind of always in the shadow of 4 and 6. So now we've got this convenient, at least if you have a PC or a mobile device version of that game. So Adam, just go ahead and just tell us what your time has been like with the pixel remaster for Final Fantasy V.
Yeah, so I've always been a fan or a champion, you could say, of Final Fantasy V. So I first played it, and I think most people are in the same boat who have played it. I first played it when the GBA version released, in the early or mid-2000s.
That was the first English official version, right?
No, there was an anthology version on PlayStation 1, I believe.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it was the second English release. If I remember correctly, Final Fantasy V on GBA actually came out after the DS release. It was kind of weird. So it was like late in the GBA life. But yeah, I've always been a really big fan of it. Obviously its biggest centerpiece is its job system. is it was kind of the very first Final Fantasy game with that thorough job system. It kind of evolved to what Final Fantasy 3 had, but in terms of like the mixing and matching, the different jobs like Thief and Blue Mage and Black Mage and Dragoon and all these different jobs, it had a really cool system in place where you can learn the abilities of one job and then you can take them over as you transfer to a different job, and you can mix and match a bit. And this is the sort of system that would later be seen and basically the inspiration for Bravely Default games. So it's a really cool system. It's extremely flexible, and I've always been fond of that. It does mean that the game is sort of it's very flexible in the sense that if you allow yourself to basically for the full freedom to do whatever you want in terms of the jobs in place, you can kind of create these sort of mini demigods from your characters, because the game, once you find those kind of balances or those combinations that are just overpowered, you can pretty much steamroll through the game. But what some people have done is the job fiesta. I forget what they call it. It's the full name of it, but the job fiesta kind of event that happens each year, where people, what they do is they will go to a website that basically tells them when you go to each crystal which job you can use from it.
The
and it's
Final
the only
Fantasy
one you can use.
5 board job fiesta.
Yep. So basically, it's just it's like a limiter where it's like a challenge run where you basically, a website will just sort of randomly tell you got to the first crystal, you can only use, roll the dice, the thief job or whatever. And it's really fun because you basically have to force yourself to only use certain jobs. But the thing is, the reason why I'm bringing this up at all is that the game is effectively completable. Like, you can beat the game with any combination of jobs, no matter what you get, even if they're like really shitty jobs that don't balance each other out well, because the game is just so flexible in the things you can do and the different strategies you can have and all the different ways you can beat enemies and bosses and things. So that's kind of one reason why that Fiesta event has kind of taken off in sort of the retro gaming sphere, because it's just that type of game. But anyways, I really enjoy Final Fantasy V. The Pixel Remaster, I know some people are not super on board with the Pixel Remaster art style, but let me tell you, I was looking up a rare spawn location of the Stingray, if you care. And I found a YouTube video that uses the mobile art, and God, that mobile art
the mobile art.
Yeah, like
everything looks really.
I had to remind myself how bad it looks. Like, after playing, after playing the Pixel Remaster for a dozen hours or whatever, and like, all right, I'm looking up a rare spawn location because I couldn't find it, and then found a video with the mobile art, and I'm just like, oh God, that is so ugly, like relative.
I want to give
what I
props
just been
to
playing.
whoever like wrote a guide based on the mobile art or whatever.
Yeah, it was a YouTube video, but so it's got the same Pixel Remaster art style. Of course, the whole point of the Pixel Remaster is that, like, Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and upcoming 6 will kind of effectively all look the same. And they kind of, they have a uniform pixel style art style to it, which I think is pretty good. Obviously it's different. It doesn't look quite like the SNES stuff or the GBA stuff or the mobile stuff or the PSP stuff or whatever. But I think it looks pretty good. The music is great for the most part. The rearranged soundtracks for Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster and all the Pixel Remasters, really. Obviously, with any arrangement of songs, inevitably there might be one or two here or there. It's like, I don't like the new instrumentation here. I think in the case of Final Fantasy V, for example, the World 3 world map music, they changed the instrumentation up a little bit. It's like, I don't know if I care for that. But for the most part, the music is really, really good. Getting that kind of full, like, real instrumentation through to a lot of the soundtrack is, of course, just it really brings it to life. It's really, really cool. Final Fantasy V, it sometimes gets some flack for its story, but I kind of like that it's sort of sandwiched in between two very serious, almost overdramatic or melodramatic stories in Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI, where Final Fantasy V is a bit sillier, it's a bit more lighthearted, but it does have heart to it in terms of the characters that you play as and the kind of the things that they go through. It's just not so darn serious all the time. And there are some moments in the game that are really silly. There's a pretty significant moment in the game that involves a splinter, like a wood splinter. And if you play the game, you know what I mean. If you don't, you're probably thinking, what? But
I'll be honest, I'm in that second camp. I'm like, okay, all right.
yeah,
the first
it's more of a plot thing, but there's some silly stuff in like the story, and it's not like, if you were to grade the plot, like what happened first, what happened second, it probably wouldn't like score very well in a rubric. But there's a lot of heart to it. It's lighthearted. It's silly, in places. But yeah, I really enjoyed Final Fantasy V. I really enjoyed going back to it. It's worth noting that the Pixel Remaster, just like the other ones, like 4 and 6 coming up, it doesn't have the GBA content, which is, for the most part, it's like there were a few extra jobs, and then there was a bunch of super bosses, which, for Final Fantasy V, considering the type of game it is, the super boss content in the GBA version is pretty fun, because it's basically like testing you to the extreme in terms of, all right, you have all these jobs and you can do all these different combinations with them. Can you beat Neo Shinryu or whatever? Like, can you come up with a team that can do that? So it's missing some of that content because they made the decision not to include that, which is, fair, I guess, and it's fair to be criticized as well. But otherwise,
so I've never played Final Fantasy V, and I want to. I've played, 2, 3, 4. I don't think I've played 1. 5 is basically a big gap in my Final Fantasy history, I suppose. Does it have like a lot of post-game challenges by default, like still in the base game?
No. Basically,
Okay,
once you beat X-Death, who's the final boss, it's over.
I'm trying to think of like how many of the like older Final Fantasies had like post-game content. Like, not really.
I think, well, I guess 5, you have a few bosses you can fight before X-Death who are arguably more challenging. That's like Omega and Shinryu. They're not necessarily as long, but they're kind of like optional bosses that are tough that might require a certain strategy to beat, but not really post-game content. I'm sort of stretching the definition there. But there's in the SNES and PlayStation era, well, maybe not PlayStation era, but SNES and earlier era, sometimes you get those like optional bosses, but that's about as far as it went.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the type of game where, like, if you're more inclined to like systems and mechanics, it's the type of game that might click for you. If you're more inclined to like really serious plotting and storylines and serious characters and topics, maybe not so much. I know James he wrote an article about it earlier this year, like you said, and his argument was that actually like the story is worthwhile and the characters are worthwhile, and I agree with him, but it is just like a different sort of tonality compared to, honestly, what you think of Final Fantasy. It's not so serious. It's
I think that's a little bit of a shame of like how gaming has evolved. Like more, it feels like more people just want more mature stories, more like, just like serious in tone. This has to be like, it feels like a Academy Award movie story or whatever.
Or if they go not serious, it ends up being more almost like slapstick or like irreverent, like self-deprecating. I guess you also see that, like, I know some people have been talking about that with this is kind of a different topic, but with the Netflix adaptations of anime that ends up having like some quips in it, or with like the Marvel movies, with like the new Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, like some of the humor in that. And I think that you see some of that in games as well, where it's like they've either got to be serious because we want people to take them seriously and you don't otherwise, or they got to like lean into being silly, like, oh, this is a silly game, gotta be wacky.
One of those like, turns to the camera, winks, like, catering to that, like build up to that moment. It's like, I kind of miss that era, just having a goofy, fun goofball time, and that.
Just whimsy for like whimsy's sake. Just like, why not? Exactly. Like, I'm imagining like Gao
I also replayed Legend of Mana like earlier this year. I was like, yeah, this is still pretty good. Like, it does have like its goofy, like whimsical, like story arcs and whatnot.
So between Final Fantasies 4 and 5, which one have you enjoyed more, Adam?
I like 5 more. I've never been a huge fan of 4. 4, I think, was a good, like, early RPG. When did that come out? Like 1992. In terms of what stories can be like in video games, like in that early era. But I actually don't think it's that great overall. Like, it's pretty simple. It's very melodramatic. It has like 5 fake out deaths. And it's also, the game itself is honestly, it's like the easiest Final Fantasy game. You can pretty much get through it mashing attack and healing sometimes, which is true for other games as well, but especially that one. So just from a game standpoint, I definitely like 5 more, and I kind of like the not so darn serious all the time tone as well. I'm really interested actually to experience Final Fantasy VI again when it comes out for the Pixel Remaster, which I assume is like early next year at the, probably not much later than that, because I think Final Fantasy VI, like I also played that when that came out on GBA because I never had a Super Nintendo, right? So I was late to the party there. But I haven't like replayed it since. So that was mid 2000. So it's been, 15 years since I played Final Fantasy VI. I remember liking it a lot, of course, and it's of course a very well loved game. But it's like the one Final Fantasy game that is sort of like the furthest back in my like this. It's the longest since that I played it compared to any other Final Fantasy. So I'm really interested to like revisit it finally. So.
Yeah, it's also during a time like the SNES era that like it was really doing advanced stuff graphically.
Oh yeah.
I wonder how that will translate into like this whole like uniform art style that they're doing with the Pixel remasters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also feel like Final Fantasy VI has the most nostalgia to overcome because people like
any change, any slight tweak or change to it, whether it's visuals or sound or whatever, people are going to complain about, like, inevitably. I'm not saying that's bad or valid or not. It's just like it's going to happen. And if you tweak anything, even in the slightest way, even for a good reason,
it's the specific
to make it uniform or to change the sound arrangement or whatever.
I would say the specific shade of Terra's hair or whatever.
Yeah. People still argue, like, is it too green or not blonde enough or whatever,
For the most part, though, like all these Pixel remasters so far have like found an in like a somewhat decent balance compared to like all the other re-releases in the past. Like on terms of like updating and both like visuals and sound, like they've done a decent job. I'll give them that. Like it's been pretty good. Like I thought, because they've suffered so many hits and misses over the past, more misses than hits. I was just like, I'm genuinely impressed that they came out pretty good.
Yeah, even with these remasters, there's the whole like are they comprehensive if they don't have the GBA stuff or the font things? But it kind of feels like for whatever reason those didn't have a lot of staying power. People just kind of like they weren't that important. At least that's been my impression from the outside. Is that I guess like no one cares about or talks about the font anymore. Maybe that's just because it's so easy to mod out. Did you tweak it out?
I don't mod in my own font. I just switch it to like the English font that's included in the Japanese like font file, because it's just that's good enough for me. It's a little bit thicker. It's still like a sans serif font, which I know some people might prefer a more pixely font like the GBA font or whatever. But I just kind of swap it out so it's not so darn thin. It'll be, because it hasn't been officially announced yet, but I think it's inevitable that these remasters will end up on consoles eventually. I think that's pretty safe assumption.
Yeah,
but it'll be interesting to see.
Like safe to guess that.
But it'll be interesting to see, like, are people going to be stuck with that really thin font that's the standard for the PC release? And I wonder, honestly, like, I sort of wonder also if we're just in like a bubble and we're the only ones that care. But it seems like, based on like search traffic and whatnot, that people do care about that font. We'll see, though. It'll be interesting. I do have one other thing to say. Final Fantasy V, I had forgotten how like colorful some of the dialogue is, and it's I'm talking about like the localization here, and it's definitely embellished in places. And it was just sort of that era, but it kind of fits the tone of the game anyway. So just a few examples. There's one part where you're like entering a dungeon or a desert, and one of the characters, Mid, who is Sid's grandson, Sid and Mid, like he's telling you to never give up, and he what he says is, quote, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings, and the orchestra hasn't even started tuning up yet."
That's like, a little much.
Yeah, that's like I doubt that's faithful to the Japanese, but there's a couple of different quips like that throughout the game. There's another character
feel like very 90s or something.
Yeah. I know the GBA localization was updated from the PlayStation 1, and that's what the remaster uses. There's also a character named Guido who is he's a turtle, but he's kind of sarcastic and quippy. And there's a line from him where like he kind of pokes fun at Bart's being the main character for being a little bit slow on the uptake. And one of his lines is, quote, "Yes, the 12 legendary weapons. They are weapons. They are legendary. There are even 12 of them." And just stuff like that, where he's just like kind of dry humor, a little bit sarcastic in places. So there's there are points where I think it's maybe a little bit much, but it kind of fits the tonality of the game, where it's kind of just silly. There's another line where did
you make note of these, or are you just like
no, I made note of these. There's another line where like Guido is a turtle, so he's really old, and he's like, "What, you think I sat around 7 centuries munching on pizza?" I wonder if he said that in Japanese, but maybe it wasn't pizza, but it was some other dish. I don't know.
It was a donut.
Maybe he did say pizza in Japanese. I don't know, but there's stuff like that, and it's like it's part of the charm in a way. Like, is it a good localization? Like by today's standards, I don't know. I don't really even care to get into that, but that's just sort of the style that it has, and I just kind of found that interesting, kind of going through it. It does feel like you said, it does feel kind of 90s, even though this localization was done in the mid 2000s. But it is what it is.
But like, yeah, it's part of me. Whenever you say like it fits the tone of the game, you're like, but is that only true because that's the game you've experienced? Like, it fits the tone of the game because the tone of the game is established. But then you also mention there's a plot point that revolves around a splinter. So it's like, okay. Yep. So
there's also like other stuff, like for example, like in the animations of the game, like there's a part when like Bartz and Krill or however you pronounce her name get into like a very kind of slight spat. It's not like a serious spat, but they're just kind of like shoulder rubbing each other in a sense, where like they'll kind of like shove each other, and then their sprite animation will like they'll get like these big eyes and like kind of fly off the screen for a bit, and then like Bartz will push Krill and she'll do the same thing. So there's like a lot of silly stuff in the animations too. So it kind of, and obviously that wouldn't be like localized like the animations themselves. So it kind of, there are points where the silliness is not just in the text, but it's also kind of in like these silly animations with the sprites that happen here or there.
So
I don't know if that came across well in me describing it.
No, that kind of substantiates when you say like, the dialogue fits the tone of the game, because there's these non-dialogue animations or story beats that fit that dialogue. You could look at it the other direction. Do you think any of these pixel remasters have a chance for being like best remake or re-release for the year?
Well, there have been a lot of re-releases this year.
That's the problem.
Like, it's one of those things that like I think you'd have to bundle them at some point. Then if you're going to do that, it's like just a pixel remaster collection. Then because like none of them, like in my eyes, none of them like particularly stand out except like Final Fantasy getting an official release, like the novelty of that. But like in terms of,
I was gonna say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you think this is better than the Sega Frontier remaster ports?
Well, there's like, first of all, two things. One, the font issue might just disqualify it immediately.
Yeah.
Two, the fact that it doesn't have the GBA content, like. I know it's in most of the games, like that advanced content isn't necessary, but it's like, if you're going to remove it, it makes it sort of hard to vote for you as like the best remaster of the year. But yeah, there's been the other thing I was going to say was, let's see, we have Nier, we have Saga Frontier, we have Legend of Mana, we have Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, we have Mass Effect, and I'm sure there's others I'm missing in terms of remasters that came out this year. So there's been a lot of remasters. If we're calling, I'm just like a prelude to our deliberations we're going to have in a few weeks. Off the cuff here, I think Nier has to be like really in high consideration, because it's like a lot of stuff. It is a remaster, but a lot of like the models and everything have been almost like remade within that game.
It's kind of I think of it almost in the same space as the Xenoblade definitive edition sort of thing.
But yeah, we'll talk about that more when we get to our Game of the Year stuff, because we will have a category for best re-release. We added that last year, I think, because re-releases and remasters have become, more and more common in recent years. So we kind of wanted to kind of create a separate category for those.
We didn't want to crowd out the space.
I would feel weird, like, if we were considering what's the best game of the year and like to consider Nier in that category, just because like the game itself did come out 10 years ago, and yes, I know the remaster is for the most part a better version of it, but like I think it's just best to compare like remasters to remasters and like which ones kind of bring new life to the game.
Old games are always better than new games. Fuck new games.
Nocturne.
Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster. Nocturne is better in some ways, but it is definitely like definitely has like a bit of an acquired or aged old person taste. So
me.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like an Adam taste or something.
Yeah, but yeah, Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster. It's really good. I know it came out in like 2 days before Shin Megami Tensei 5. So like maybe people just missed it, and it's just a kind of a relatively busy month in general. But hey, I just think it's great finally that Square Enix is putting these classic games like on PC and hopefully on other consoles, because for the longest time there was like no good way to play like Final Fantasy 1 or 2, and then like 5, the only way to play it on a modern system was like with that mobile art. So it's nice. I think it's good. It's not perfect, but it's good.
In terms of just like catalog accessibility, it's just really nice to have and just say like you can play. Well, the big caveat though there is the console thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hopefully soon. I'm sort of assuming that it'll come to consoles hopefully. So
if they come to console, then I'll say like this is just really handy to have, just to have Final Fantasies 1 through 6, kind of like this catalog of very iconic games, and each with their strengths and weaknesses, and some obviously more well regarded than others, but accessible for anyone to play and make their own opinion on it. So, but until then, we'll get a PC or a mobile device or enjoy touch controls, I suppose. I don't know. So some of the other games that we could talk about this week, I feel like we've already kind of been well worn through the last couple of weeks. We've talked about Shin Megami Tensei with a few different perspectives. I talked about Ruined King both of the last 2 weeks. I will say that I did write up my formal thoughts on Ruined King in a review up on the site. I won't go back into it again because a lot of my thoughts were elucidated on last week on the podcast, and I just kind of put them in written form, but did just want to call out that is up on the site as a formal review now. Josh, I do know that you've been dipping your toes into a few things, maybe not like fully diving into a new RPG, but maybe just some other games, just trying things out. Do you have anything that you kind of like had a highlight of the last week that you were wanting to share?
Yeah, I tried out a little bit of Death's Door. I've still didn't go through it. That's an interesting game, like an isometric action RPG that James really liked earlier this year when that came out. I think it's really like there's a certain thing about the art style that like kind of reminds you of Fantasia a little. It's not really quite dioramas, but it gives that feeling sometimes going through it. So I've been playing a little bit of that. I'm still making my way through it. I just don't know what I'm in the mood for right now. So like sometimes like I don't know if I really want to play this kind of game right now, or maybe not. So because there's been a lot going on my end, along Game of the Year coming up. So I tried a little bit of that. I tried out a little bit of Project Wingman. That was gifted from a friend that like invested in its crowdfunding. I think it was Kickstarter, I guess, and it fully came out I think earlier this year. Because I already went through Ace Combat 7. I was like, you know what, I want to try this out. I kind of in the mood for a jet game, and it does really feel like an Ace Combat game. That's been really cool. Like you're gaining new planes and new jets as you complete levels, and it's like different objectives, whether you're bombing certain like locations or dogfighting against other squadrons. I'm just doing the main campaign right now. I haven't touched the conquest mode, but that's been feeling really good, and it looks quite nice. I think it's only on PC right now. But like,
is it more simmy, or is it more like arcadey? Like
it is more arcadey. It does have that Ace Combat thing where you can have like simplified controls if you don't want to go the whole deal with like roll and yaw and hold that stuff. so you can have simplified controls like Ace Combat in it, but I do like those standard controls. But yeah, if you're familiar with Ace Combat, expect Ace Combat. It's not super sibby, like just like Ace Combat games. They're more arcadey.
Right.
Yeah, so that's been pretty cool. And then I've also been I started Omori. Omori is one of those Kickstarter games that has been like it came out in Christmas last year, so it was not eligible for last year's Game of the Year stuff, but people really, really, really loved it. Like I've had multiple friends that like have gone to our RPG site Game of the Year polls, and they said like, yeah, when I go through it, like Amori is an easy pick. It's built I think on the RPG Maker engine. Definitely has that kind of visuals, but there's a certain charm to it that's like you'll start it and you'll have no idea what the heck's going on. It's like I started like I don't know what's going on. You start like this white space, like black and white monochromatic room, and you play this character named Omori. And there's just a lot of vague stuff going on. You look at the journal, and then the only journal is like, yeah, I stayed in this like blank white space room. It was a good day, or I went out and hung out with friends today, and it was a good day, and that's all his journals like filled up with. And then you go out, you meet his friends, they try to join your party. It's like a turn-based RPG, and but it's very eerie. So like when you get out the surface, like the open world, like you go like in any direction, it's like, oh, you can't go through here because you're afraid of spiders. Oh, you can't go up this ladder because you're afraid of heights. Oh, you can't like you go up this pier or like this body of water, and like you see like this little eerie thing, but you're not. But it kind of like exits before you get a good look at it. It's like a black and white sort of like Yumeniki style of like horror. And it's like
I was actually going to say, sorry to interrupt you, but I was holding off on the comparison because in case it was really off. But I'm like, it kind of reminds me of Yumi Nikki.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the way you're describing it, and I've had the Steam page pulled up, just kind of getting an idea for the visuals.
Yeah. But you're not sure what that is yet, and then I go to the edge of here, and it's like, oh, you're afraid of drowning. So it's like right away you're just like, okay, you're filled into like there are things you're afraid of, and you can't proceed towards these yet because you're afraid of this. And then so you go like to the bottom, and you go to this playground, and you're just like kind of meeting like a community of characters, and I don't know how significant they'll be, but then you're just like hanging out and having a picnic with your friends, going through photos of like the time they shared together, and then you play hide and seek with the rest of the inhabitants in the playground, and it's kind of been that so far. In terms of battle system, it's pretty interesting in the way that it's presented, because it's when you go into battles, like your life bars, you have 4 people in your party, Omori and 3 other of his friends, and they take up each corner of the screen. There's all 4:3 aspect ratio as well, and the enemy is at the center of the screen. And the battle system has your standard like attack. Characters will attack. So like Omori has like a shiny knife that he picked up in his room. The others have like like a ball or like a pan, and there's this whole like mood system where you have like these spells or like skills where you can make an enemy or ally like sad, happy, or angry, and being put into a certain mood will have different affinities toward other like status effects. So let's say that's this whole like triangle system of like sad beats angry and angry beats happy, but happy beats sad. So I assume like for certain points of the game that like you'll really want to like manipulate allies and enemies to have certain moods, so you have like an advantage over them, and you're dealing more damage and they're dealing less damage to you. But also being in a certain mood will like alter your stats a little. So like say if you're happy, you may hit more, or not hit more, have a better accuracy and a better like crit chance, and so forth. So
it almost reminds me of like a long-term status effect almost, or buff.
And then I think sad is like you have a better defense. I think I put up a picture of this real fast. So okay, there it is. Yeah, happy beats angry beats sad. When you're sad, your defense is up, but your speed is down. But when you're happy, it replaces your luck and speed, but it decreases your hit rate. and then angry, your attack is up, your defense is down. So your juggling. Those are the mechanics that I've been introduced to so far. So I've only dabbled just a little bit, but it seems really interesting. I really wonder why people love it so much. So that's it's also for educational purposes, and people are saying like as long the less you know, the better. Like, do not search up anything anymore because it's very easily spoiled. I'm like, okay, all right. So
I actually have been spoiled. I won't say anything, but like,
but I won't say anything.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Sorry.
I won't say anything. But
I'm just agreeing with the. I'm just agreeing with the sentiment that like. Now, obviously, I don't have the context. Maybe the context is very important, but there are like, there's a hook to the game or a twist to the game that's like it's very easily like, it's not complex to say.
Okay. So maybe not say anymore. But yes, okay.
I won't.
So no less going in than know as little as possible. And then obviously,
it's sort of like it's sort of like the twist to Knights of the Republic. It's sort of an easy thing to spoil if you aren't familiar with it. Like, you are Revan. Oh, I just spoiled it. Like,
damn it!
I just spoiled Knights of the Republic.
There's a remake coming out.
That's what I mean. It's just like that easy to spoil.
All right. Well, hopefully, we don't have people looking forward to the remake. Get mad at Adam if you're going to be mad at anyone.
But yeah, those are just been the things that I've been working on here and there. There's not like any big December releases that like I'm probably gonna like jump into right away. I know there's still the second DLC pack for Super Robot Wars that I'm kind of looking forward to because it adds a higher difficulty mode because I'm a masochist for that game sometimes. And yeah.
Well, I think that kind of covers us for games we've been playing, because we don't. Because I talked about Shin Megami Tensei Andrew and King last week, and we're gonna leave some breathing room for the Final Fantasy expansion, and obviously we'll probably want James on the cast as well when we get to talk about that early next year. We did have one more feature up on the site that I wanted to call out. We did talk last week about the not really a formal announcement, but this sort of the detailing of Amazon's upcoming Mass Effect TV show. Who's it going to star? Is it going to have Shepard? And Andrea Sharon is a huge Mass Effect fan and wrote up basically a feature of what she wants to see in this TV show. Basically, if it's not going to retell the trilogy or be a prequel or whatever, it's what basically her idea is for what she is interested in as a big fan of that IP and of that series. So that is also up on the site as well.
I'm also just going to mention that I wrote up a walkthrough for Final Fantasy V. That is, so when I use a walkthrough, the main thing I'm personally interested in is just like, what can I miss? Like, what's a missable? Like, because I didn't talk to some person in some narrow window of time. And Final Fantasy V actually does have quite a few like missable things because of the way the game is structured. So I put together sort of a minimalist walkthrough. I don't necessarily I don't give strategies on how to beat bosses because the game is so flexible enough anyway. But I kind of just wrote up a walkthrough about like, here's how you can step through the game and make sure you get everything along the way. So I just kind of point those out while you sort of just come up with the strategies and build your team yourself. So
yeah, it's like a fishbone walkthrough. I don't know if that's the right word, but basically a skeleton walkthrough that hits all the high points without going into like
if you follow it, you shouldn't miss anything. But it's up to you to actually figure out like how to beat a boss or how to get through a dungeon. So. Mm-hmm.
No, thank you for that. So, Ruined King review, Final Fantasy V walkthrough, Mass Effect TV show opinion feature, all up on the site right now, alongside all the news that we're about to talk into. We did have a semi-major announcement this week from Spike Chunsoft, and this is basically from the creative minds behind the Danganronpa series. I hope I pronounced that right. And that is Enigma Archives Rain Code. So we got a introductory teaser trailer for this project. Basically, it highlights the fact that it is from the creators of Danganronpa. It does have the very similar art style because it has the same scenario writer, composer, and character illustrator, Kazutaka Kodaka, Masafumi Takada, and Rui Komatsuzaki. So I am not familiar with the Danganronpa series, but I do know that a lot of people have very, very high opinions of it. We actually do have 2 kind of legacy reviews up on the site back when we kind of stretched the definition of what our site covered for reviews back in the day, back in the before times, both with perfect scores on the series. So I do know that a lot of people have been kind of wondering what's next. And this is not obviously in the same series, but kind of like a successor with a lot of this, at least a lot of the same sort of theming based on the trailer that we saw. I don't know if anyone has a history with the series that saw this trailer, can like kind of dive into it more deeply in terms of what they're able to kind of peel out of it.
I mean, 2Q Games has done more than this. Like ever since the Danganronpa team has split off and made their own studio, they did Death Come True, which was like an FMB mystery game, which was actually pretty neat. I like. I don't hate that game. It's pretty short, but its presentation was actually pretty cool. So Death Come True was a neat thing. World's End Club was a miss. I don't like Death End.
Oh right, World's End
Club. Yeah, that was previously like the first part was like an Apple Arcade exclusive that it fully came out and unlocked the rest of it, and like it just I didn't like it. They also delve into anime series like with Akudama Drive. And Akudama Drive it has some cool ideas, but it's still kind of like not a death game, but it's like a death pack sort of like unwilling allies kind of bound together because of a like they're basically forced into the state. They're kind of like mercenaries, prisoner mercenaries, and they have like these death collars on them and say if you don't follow what I want to do, then like I'm gonna blow you up. And it goes from there.
You're talking about 999 here for a second.
Exactly. Like that they kind of have like a sort of style and like to them, and I hope this Enigma Archives game it kind of tries to do something different, because they kind of almost do the same thing. Like World's End Club started off very similarly to that. It does flip the idea on its head a little, but they still rely on that to kind of lure people in, which I don't know. So there's not much to go on in the trailer. It's like kind of like a CG trailer with some snippets of gameplay. Who knows what the gameplay really is?
Yeah, they call it a teaser trailer, so it's more just setting the stage.
Yeah, so it might be cool, but and when I think like, oh, the developers of Danganronpa are doing something, I'm like, I hope they do something new and like something they're not really comfortable with. That's why I like Death Come True, because it's like something kind of new for them. And so I don't know. I want to see more of this, see where it goes. I don't think they worked on this directly, but I hear that Switch release of Danganronpa that came out recently, and not great, not great. So that was based on the mobile version, I think. So there's a lot of like, that's not even that graphically significant, because the mobile.
Yeah, I had heard that the Switch version, I don't know this for certain because I haven't played, but I heard that the Switch version of Danganronpa was based off the mobile version, which is just a little bit stripped down, I guess, in terms of its like visual effects and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
and then
that's a little bit disappointing, if true.
I hear people also don't like the new content, like that new board game thing, summer board game thing. So yeah, but I don't think they were involved in that. I'd have to imagine not, but who knows?
And there are no details on release, so we don't know if this is a next year plan or further out than that. There is a Japanese teaser website alongside the trailer, and obviously the trailer is uploaded on Spike Chunsoft's YouTube channel that basically just says more details incoming. So basically all we've got right now is the teaser trailer to go on. But I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this as soon as we shared it on our social media channels, as well as under the official trailer. So we'll keep an eye on it, see if it shows up next year. We do have a couple more details about games that we do know are already coming next year, or already know that are coming next year. One of them is Atelier Sophie 2. We've kind of talked about this. They're in the phase of their marketing where they're going into like really the minutia of detailing character bios and gameplay systems that are usually reminiscent of systems that have already appeared in other games. So we do have that up on the site. They do detail new characters, Parika and Kati, as well as Gnome. So it's up on the site if you really want to dive into the minutiae of that game. Again, Atelier Sophie 2 is releasing in February next year. I don't know when in relation to Elden Ring, but close enough to it. On a similar vein, but with a little bit more meat on the bone, I do know that Adam and Kite Steinbuck have been working really hard in a similar sort of news dump for the upcoming Triangle strategy. So, Adam, I might just hand it off to you here because I know a lot of this detail had to be kind of like collated and composited from several sources, and you put together basically a really long, detailed article going through all the character art, all their names, all their bios. So just kind of what was the detail here? Did this all come from a trailer or from a website? Just go ahead and kind of talk about what you put together.
Okay, so to back up a step, admittedly, these sort of Square Enix published in Japan, but Nintendo published in the West games, sometimes like the marketing or the information dole out on those is a little bit like off step because of that sort of publishing setup. And so, like, for example, like Nintendo released a trailer that sort of introduced like a handful of sub characters, just very, very briefly in English, but it's just like a very quick trailer and that's it. While like Japan released, Square Enix in Japan released a press release with like a full-fledged character bio and whatnot. And like, so they're not necessarily like aligned in how in when these came out or what they're showing. And so they recently revealed like more of the characters and described them, and we just sort of decided let's just kind of take what's been put out so far, either from Nintendo in the West or Square Enix in Japan, and just kind of put them all together. And what that led to here is that we have bios for 19 of the characters. So basically the main cast, most of the immediately interesting sub characters, and then a bit of the extended cast as well. We have character arts for all of them. A lot of people, we posted it on Twitter, really like the character art. It's got that, sort of watercolor-ish style. I actually don't know who the artist is, but it's reminiscent of Tactics Ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics. It's not like Akihiko Yoshida art, but it's got that somewhat similar sort of coloring and style to it. It's clearly reminiscent of that era of Square Enix games.
What was that game that got remastered that had the hexagon tiles strategy game?
Unsung Story?
No, I know what you're talking about. Oh my gosh. I know what you're talking about. I'm blanking on it.
Chow, I know Chow.
Unsung Story got rid of it.
No, it's based on an old PlayStation 1 game that you summon monsters.
Oh, Brigadine?
Yeah. Who was the artist on the Brigadine remaster?
That was Raita Kazuma Raita. It's the
it's guy. Not quite the same, but the art style in that remaster looks similar-ish to this. So I do agree though that I like that it's kind of like a grounded style. It doesn't have like the distinctive like facial shapes and lack of facial features that the Yoshida has, but it's kind of softened by the fact that it is kind of like that watercolor aesthetic. So it's kind of like a really detailed, grounded style, but painted in a way that gives it a little bit more character and color. So I agree that I do think it looks nice. I know some people were like basically replying to our social media post on your and Kite's kind of synthesized character list, basically pointing like, oh, she's cool, or he's interesting, or like already my favorites from the demo, obviously, which released several months back. So I do know that people have really been kind of taken to that.
By the way, the artist I was thinking of was Raita Kazuma.
All right,
but I actually don't think he did Xenoblade character art, but he did some Xenoblade like other art, I believe,
promotional art of some sort. So
yeah, he's listed as character design on Xenoblade Chronicles Cross, but I don't think he did everyone. I think he did some. On Xenoblade Chronicles, he's cited as doing 2D art design, but I don't think it was necessarily most of the characters, like the main characters anyway. But anyways, the Triangle strategy piece that we put up, it also goes into, like, if you played the demo that released way earlier this year, you kind of got like a glimpse of a lot of these characters and sort of the initial conflict of the game, which has to do with it has to do with the country of, there's 3 countries. It's like Afrost, Glenbrook, and Hyzant, and they're sort of like this trio. Yeah, triangle, of course. They're sort of arranged in a way where they're sort of conflicting, or they're competing for resources. There was a war in the past,
Salt Iron War.
Yeah, and now they're sort of in an unsteady truce. But presumably at the start of the game, Afrost seems to invade and like become antagonistic for some reason, and that kind of leads off to the Flames of War once again. And the post we put together sort of highlights the premise a little bit, and like there's like a tournament at the start of the game. If you really want to get into it, you can get into it. But yeah, we just kind of put it all together. I know a lot of people just really like the character art and kind of just seeing like an overview of the characters. There are 19 of them, like I said, and there are clearly other characters that haven't been introduced yet. So, like any good tactical RPG or tactics ogre should have, there's going to be, seems like, quite a few characters, at play in this storyline. So I hope it ends up being a pretty good, like, politically charged RPG, because it's been a while since any tactics ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics like that, right? So we put up a poll for most anticipated game next year, and I've seen a lot of people like mentioning they're very, very interested in triangle strategy. So poll results will come soon.
Based on the demo, and I wrote a feature of this back like in March or something. The demo, if you haven't played it, does it's only 2 chapters, I believe 6 and 7. And based on your choice made between the two, like the 7th chapter is a completely different location with a completely different like antagonist target. If I remember right, I'm reaching back. If you want to protect the prince, you end up fighting one of the Ace Frost like generals. But if you give up the prince, you end up having to fight one of the Hazanti like houses. I might be getting some of that mixed up, but basically the location, the enemy, the goal all changes. So if that like filters throughout the game, in a way that they're trying to market that it does, I'm expecting several of these characters to be like mutually exclusive. I expect basically if we're playing through it, like, oh, I was able to get so-and-so on my team. Oh, what? I had to fight and kill them or whatever. And I actually hope it does do that, because that would be very like Tactics Ogre in its if it ends up carrying out that way. I do think it'd be really impressive and kind of meaningful, rather than being like Fire Emblem Three Houses, where you just kind of play nice with whoever you want to get on your team and you get them on your team because that's more convenient. But yep, the title of the article on our site is Triangle Strategy Details Story, Cast of Characters, Gameplay Systems, and More. It's basically a big info dump, which I think is preferable than kind of having this little dole out sort of piecemeal thing that Atelier, Sophie 2, and so many other games kind of do. So kind of cool that you and Kite were able to put it all in one place. We do have a couple announcements. Both of these are for Switch. And this one, I think we have to give props to Josh for calling it. We talked about how between last podcast and this podcast, it was going to be the 2nd anniversary announcement stream, or not an announcement stream, celebration stream for 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. And we talked about how it was likely going to go into, merch, go into maybe some collaborations. Wasn't expecting too much of an announcement. I cheekily suggested maybe a PC port. And Josh was like, if anything, a Switch port. Well, that's what we ended up getting. 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim will be releasing for Switch in April of next year, April 12th. So I guess you called it?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's one of the craziest ideas.
Thomas.
Yeah.
Josh Thomas.
Oh, boy. Yeah, this is a really cool announcement, because a lot of people didn't pick up 13 Sentinels because it was a PS4 exclusive, and the kind of game it is more, people would be more likely to be comfortable playing it on the go or on handheld, or like on their bed and whatnot. So it's really exciting to see. It's almost like a worldwide simultaneous release between the West and Japan. It's like maybe a day or two before or after here and there.
Sorry to cut you off, Josh, but is it not December for the US release? I keep thinking that they got like those two numbers swapped around, and I got confused seeing the release. But they're just 2 days apart, is it?
It's April for like everything. Like it's either like between April 12th to 14th. Like
Okay, no problem. Because I've seen like one ad. It says 12 and 4 for the US.
Oh,
one, so
European dates. European dates. They do date month. So
yeah, you might be confused with the European date standard, because like April 12th would be like 12/4.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank God. It would take that long.
It'd be out today then.
No, because it would still say 2022, so it'd be December. Actually.
Oh yeah, it seems to be yeah. So that's pretty cool to see. I'm really interested to see how some of the battle sequences will run on Switch, especially like some of the later ones when there's a lot going on screen, and like you're like firing off like say a missile rain, and it's like, oh, all right, and that would like kind of like freeze up like the PS4 for a sec, like to like 2 to 3 FPS. It's like, okay, well, and then it'll be okay again. So, Godspeed to the Switch on running that.
We need a Switch Pro to run the RTS like sequences of 13 Sentinels.
Fire. I know a lot of people have been pondering like, oh, there is new content for the Switch. It's not major. It's pretty minor. It's not story related, but they added 2 types of additional battle outfits in the destruction mode per protagonist. So there's like 26 new outfits basically for it, and like the only time you really see these outfits like when they activate their super attack, like when you see like their full body portrait in destruction mode. So it's like it's not crazy, but it is there. I do want to see what the new outfits are per character. The thing that makes me wonder is if they're gonna have additional content in the West, in the sense that in the Nintendo Switch release for 13 Sentinels in Japan, they'll have the Digital Secret Files DLC, which was a PS4 limited edition item, and they'll also have the Digital Artworks DLC, which was an early purchase bonus. I don't think we got any of those in the West, as far as I remember. I can't remember, but I don't think we got those digital artwork DLCs. And also the digital artworks DLC for the Switch version will have 9 additional illustrations that were made after the PS4 version released, because they're like celebrations and whatnot. So that's really cool. I'm always up for more 13 Sentinels. Maybe I'll get the Switch release just to satisfy my curiosity on its performance.
Maybe we'll get Colin to review it.
Maybe, yeah, maybe, and then maybe see the Switch catch fire. Yeah, so that's I'm really happy to see that more people will give this game a shot, see if they like it. It's definitely a different kind of game, way more different than what a lot of people are expecting. It has a really cool tale. We can't give it enough praise.
And it's one of those games that it's hard to like. It's you have to say less. Like just go in.
Yeah, just go in. Yeah, there was some cool merch that they showed at the 13 Sentinels stream. Like they have like this whole like shirt that just says yakisoba pan, or a jacket that says yakisoba pan on it like 3 times over a picture of a yakisoba pan.
I like that.
They have like
if you've played it,
Yep. They have a cool mug of Okina on it that has different images that'll display if it's whether hot or cold. And yeah, it was just a really fun. The thing that really caught me off guard about the second anniversary stream for 13 Sentinels was it actually has full English subtitles on it, like captions on YouTube. And I was like, whoa, that they went through the effort of doing that. That's really cool. So really shows that they're now marketing this game like to a global audience. Now, hopefully that means that we get the DLC that never made it to the West, but you're there for the game primarily, and people should play it.
We'll wait for the 4th anniversary celebration to get a PC port.
I hope it's 3rd, but I really hope more Vanillaware titles in general end up on PC and other platforms. But yeah, and they also mentioned on the stream the Vanillaware and Atlas, I think, announced that the total shipments and digital sales for the PlayStation 4 version have surpassed 500,000 units. Yeah, that's a update, which is for a lot of people it's like, oh, it's less than 1 million, so it didn't sell out. But I mean, for this kind of like very niche game, like that's a pretty damn good number, because this is a type of game that like it's hard to market it to a mass audience.
I don't even expect it to reach that high, to be honest with you.
What?
I don't even expect it to hit that high, like 500,000.
Yeah, that's a lot. So
especially since it has such high word of mouth, but it's just kind of hard to sell because of the way the story is. So the fact that it's done so well is pretty remarkable. We have another kind of semi-surprise port coming to Switch next year, and that is .hack Last Recode, So this originally released back in 2017, and I do know that Josh covered it back then when it released on PlayStation 4, and it is also getting a Switch version. So this is basically a compilation of the dot hack games. GU, what does that stand for, Josh?
It can stand for a lot of things. Like they give you a lot of potential things it could stand for. I like the one that sticks out to me is like Genesis Union or some shit.
But they released on the PlayStation 2 in the mid 2000s. Kind of got compiled and re-released on PlayStation 4 in 2017, and it's coming to Switch next year on March 11th.
Yeah, this compiles the original 3 games that were like on the PS2, along with the new content that they made for this re-release back then, the Dot Hack Volume 4 Reconnection. Originally just a 3-volume series, and that it serves as like an extended epilogue for it, which is nice. I think this is going to be really tricky and interesting because I think in the West is going to be a digital only release, and the game, if you try to install it on PC, is like 40 gigs. So I wonder how big it's going to be on the Switch, because I know size limitations are an issue there, depending on what I don't even know if it'll fit on with the onboard memory. If you have to sacrifice everything else.
Right.
One thing that's somewhat interesting about this announcement, just from like a publisher side of things, and I checked this yesterday. I don't know if it changed within the last 24 hours or whatnot. So it was announced in Japan, this remaster, or this port of this remaster.
And that's a physical in Japan too.
Yes. Right? And then it was announced in Southeast Asia, like an English Asian version, right? And then Europe announced it, and there's even a post on the Bandai Namco Europe site that says it's digital only in the West. But Bandai Namco US, as far as I know, has not mentioned this port at all, anywhere. Not on YouTube, not on their website, not on their Twitter. There's no press release, nothing. I'm sure it's coming out in the West or in America. It's just kind of strange. Like, okay. There's no concrete details about this port in America. Just kind of strange.
Bandai Namco America doesn't care about anything except Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah, so. Pretty much.
But it's hard to not feel like there's like that like Dot Hack's last chance to like convince Bandai Namco to like invest in more Dot Hack stuff, whether it's like re-releases of the original tetralogy. I think it was what we came to the agreement here earlier.
Not quadrilogy. Apparently that is a bad word.
I mean, yeah, apparently it's tetralogy, right?
Yep.
Oh, okay. And or just a brand new Dot Hack entry, like new game. So it's hard to like. I wonder how much like not only the Switch but like in general PC, PS4 releases, just like cumulatively, how much do these games have to sell to convince Bandai Namco, hey, don't give up the series and shelve it forever, because it kind of feels like that. Which there are other properties that sell more for sure, like Sword Art Online, which is a shame, but I get it.
A shame.
Yeah, but all the best. They already said that this will be running at 30 FPS, and then we'll run 1080 on docked mode, 720 on undocked. No big surprises there due to Switch's hardware. So it should be fine still. Yeah, all the best to hopefully if you like Dot Hack and you have a Switch and you would like Dot Hack to continue, then consider maybe supporting this re-release.
We actually have a release coming out before the end of this year that has kind of flown under the radar. And that is, this is something that Adam was able to talk about a while back, and that is a expansion for Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. So this was kind of one of those remasters that I think like no one asked for, but a few people enjoyed just because it was sort of unexpected. When Re-Reckoning released, we did learn that they were going to release a brand new expansion for it called Fatesworn, but details had been kind of very slim and on the down low for a long time. I think we did get an update last month about just basically that the work was in progress, and we got a release date just recently that Re-Reckoning Fatesworn that expansion to Re-Reckoning will release on December 14th, so in a week or so, for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, with a Switch version coming next year. So, Adam, I think you're the only one here that's played Re-Reckoning. I do remember that you talking about it at length when you went through it and wrote the review for it. How excited are you for Fatesworn? Are you even excited?
I don't know if excited is the right word. It's just such a weird circumstance that I can't help but find it like interesting. So you take this nearly 10-year-old game whose developer doesn't exist anymore, and the universe is basically all but dead, gets a surprising remaster, which that alone is like, okay, I didn't realize that could happen, but it did. And then like we are going to create brand new content for it from like a different developer 10 years later. It's just like
it reminds me of the Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 Enhanced Edition.
Oh yeah, like there's sort of like now an interquel between Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 that is made by what's that studio's name? Yeah, Beamdog, who handle all the re-release stuff. I actually haven't played that yet. I literally have a save file right at the start of that. But anyway,
all I've heard from it is that feels out of place. That's all I've heard from people.
Exactly. I've heard that too. But yeah, it's just like an expansion to a storyline 10 years later. I have to imagine it's going to be weird, and maybe not in the good way. Sometimes weird is good. But one thing I did notice is like they released like 5 screenshots of this expansion, but they're just sort of like, I don't know, you can take a look at them. They're just like environments, and they're just like, okay. And it's a re-release of a PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era game. So it doesn't look
the biggest Kingdoms of Amalur fans are looking at those screens like, oh my god, it's going to be in this expansion? That's crazy. I cannot believe we're going to go there.
But like the trailer itself, I thought this was kind of funny. It doesn't actually use like in-engine footage. It's just like it's like a cartoon, like a puppet thing that they do. Like it's just it's just like an abstract trailer. Like they didn't want to actually show it. And it's like, I wonder what it actually looks like.
So release is in a week, and we don't know what it looks like.
Nice.
I mean, we do have a few screenshots. Like I'm looking at one here with a few like spider things. I don't know, they're spiders. They're fun. But it's just like, I wonder. I like spiders. Spiders are cool. But anyways, it's just I'm like I will probably check this out. Probably not this year. I just have too much to do. But like just out of just sheer curiosity, even if it's bad, just like what is this? So.
It is kind of just like out of, I do not know if I'm excited for this, but the fact that you exist is so bizarre that I'm interested inherently.
What if at the end of the next expansion it teases a sequel? Amalur 2.
Considering, so this is from THQ Nordic, who is a part of the, Embracer, like, conglomerate. And they always tout, like, how many new games they have in development. And like, I wouldn't put it past them if they have the rights to like create a sequel, to have like grab one of their literally hundreds of studios to create a sequel. So I would not be surprised. I don't think it's like a priority, but I would not be surprised if someone is like trying to greenlight a sequel for the Xbox 5 generation or whatever. So,
and I guess that'll be eligible for something next year. Best continuing support, I guess, for 2022.
Yeah, I never know. Maybe Fatesworn's fucking amazing, dude.
Yeah, maybe it is. Yeah, let's be optimists. We did get an update too. We've avoided talking about it at length so far, but I guess we'll talk about it a little here. Update for Shin Megami Tensei 5 that surprisingly, when we shared this news on Twitter, kind of took off because I guess a lot of people were looking forward to this. The update is version 1.02, and it mainly affects 2 things as far as I can tell. Well, 3 things. One of them is that it gives you options for increasing the like camera angle field of view. Hooray! Because I think
that's the big one.
That has to be the big one.
Well, I remember last week or the week before saying like, I wonder if it's so close because they do that for performance concerns, and now they're like, well, we're going to allow you to pull it out, so to have a wider field of view. So like, okay, I guess they're going to go do that anyways. And then they allowed changes to brightness, which seems weird to come in a post-release patch because usually if a game has 1 or 2 settings, it has like sound volume and brightness. But now there will be a new brightness setting.
They've added standard features to the video game.
Yay. But the fun thing about the brightness setting, fun, I don't know if that's the right word, but Adam, isn't there like a caveat that says on max brightness, some things might look weird, basically?
So first of all, these patch notes were in Japanese. I don't think this update is actually out in English yet. Or at least it wasn't like as of a day ago, which is sort of weird.
As of the time of the recording, when I last played Shin Megami Tensei 5, it said version 1.01 for me, so not yet.
Yeah, but anyways, it said something like, "Be careful. Sometimes if you have it on max brightness, it might be too bright." I think it's like a seizure warning.
Okay, that's more fair. Brightness bright.
There are some places in the game, like the third area, that are a little bit dark, so maybe people want to increase the brightness. But the camera thing is sort of the main thing.
I still want to see Fairy Village in max brightness.
Yeah, that place is a lot of bloom.
It's like, oh, there's like burn-in on my screen immediately. What the hell?
And then here's the last change that says a slight tweak has been made to the third floor of the Demon's King's castle, simplifying the number of jumps needed to be made. And as someone who just recently gone through the castle, like I thought it was pretty straightforward. There were some parts on the third floor where I had to like engage my brain and be like, all right, if I need to get over there, and this is where so I guess I need to back up. In Shin Megami Tensei 5, there is a dungeon-like area late in the game where there's these like wind vents that you have to time when you stand in front of them to either be launched up or sideways across the gap. And as you go through the dungeon, they get a little bit more intricate, but not that intricate. It's like, it's usually like there's one obvious path. When you get to the third floor, which I believe is the last floor, you have to think a little bit more because you have to like chain a few in a row. And it was, it was fine. It was perfectly serviceable as a dungeon puzzle in an RPG. But now I guess they're simplifying it and you don't have a choice. So
yes. I actually find this a little bit of a bummer because like the Shin Megami Tensei series, especially on the PS2, had some like really fun and tricky dungeons. But I guess in the modern paradigm of JRPGs, just broadly, I observe that people don't really care for dungeons much anymore, which is kind of sad. So people must have complained about this section, about like it's too tricky or it's too cumbersome or whatever. So they're streamlining it, it sounds like. And they're just going to be, I guess it'll just be less jumps, less, that's what they say, less jumps, but less,
simplifying the number of
dungeon mechanics.
Yeah, so it's just like it kind of bums me out that they took like the one part of Shin Megami Tensei 5 that kind of felt like a classic SMT dungeon. That third floor of the Demon's King Castle is like the one part that sort of felt like a good dungeon. Because the other dungeon, the Temple of Eternity, just kind of is whatever overall. Like there's no saving that. But this was like the one part that felt like a good dungeon, and then they're just like they're removing the dungeony aspect of it. So it's just kind of like I find it a little bit of a bummer, to be honest.
Look, man. Think about it like this. Remember, SMT5 I think is directed by like an Etrian Odyssey dude.
Yeah, which is also strange. It's like Etrian Odyssey is a dungeon.
So what does this mean for the future of Etrian Odyssey? Are there no more dungeon Etrian Odyssey?
The next Etrian Odyssey is going to be set in an open world.
Oh no! Oh my god! Fuck. Can you imagine? It's like the one core thing about Etrian Odyssey that its whole fan base likes is that it's like a dungeon crawler, and they take that out.
It's going to be a story-based game, like how everything is now.
Open world Etrian Odyssey.
That open world story-based Etrian Odyssey.
Oh, geez. Can you? If I heard those words behind Etrian Odyssey, I'm like, oh my god, the series is done. That's it.
But okay, Shin Megami Tensei 5 got a nice little quality of life update. Maybe it would have been nice if the dungeon tweak was like kept to the story mode free DLC version, and maybe that like programmatically that was.
They should have it like the fucking Magatama or Mitama the DLC where it's just a toggleable option.
Oh yeah, just there's one option in the menu. Do you want normal castle or easy castle, and reload if you're in it. So.
Oh Jesus.
But it is there. It's not out yet at the time of recording, but it's mostly just a couple quality of life tweaks that I think the game needed. At least the first two things. At least the first one thing, I suppose. I don't know if it really needed brightness settings, but it'll have them now. Paper Mario is coming to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack this week on December 10th. The original N64 game that is actually still an RPG that I think most of us think pretty fondly of that have played it. So I don't know if
it's pretty darn good, honestly.
Yeah.
And like, is this the?
I wonder.
Go ahead, Josh.
I wonder if like the weird input lag that the Switch emulator has for N64, if that'll affect anything in the game. Like You're like, will it just feel weird to like the average person or not? Because that it does have some pretty time-based things.
Yeah,
It's
it's turn-based, which some people always kind of use as a crutch for like, it doesn't need good frame rate or input lag if it's turn-based. But we've already talked about Shin Megami Tensei 5 has some weird like performance hiccups where even though it's turn-based, it's really frustrating that it doesn't run better. And I know that's more frame rate than input lag, but there are some sort of platformy-ish puzzles. It is still a Mario game.
Anyway, that game sucks, man. I'm telling you, try to get through menus of that game. Like, it's just like sucks.
Yeah, but I don't know if this makes the expansion pack on Nintendo Switch Online worth it. That's the one that basically makes it $50 a year instead of what, 30?
20.
20.
Family.
Well, it's I believe some of the prices. If you're just a single person getting the normal Switch Online, it's $20. If you're a single person getting the expansion pack, it's $50. I'm pretty sure it's a $30 jump because that includes N64, Genesis, stuff like the Happy Home thing.
Because the family pack is like inherently more expensive, but could be cheaper depending on how you divide it.
I think the family pack is for the expansion pack is $80.
Yeah,
but for up to 8 people. I might get some of those numbers wrong, but it's more expensive.
I mean, you could get 8 people, but I don't know. Yeah. I would pay $30 extra for Super Nintendo, but I wouldn't pay $30 extra for N64. That's how
as an RPG website, I actually kind of casually mentioned this in the post about this and the reporting about it, is there aren't actually that many RPGs on the N64. They're just not. Paper Mario is like one of the few.
Tactics Ogre 64, dude.
Quest 64.
Yeah, there's Quest 64.
And just to make sure the prices are labeled right, you have the single individual prices right. $20 for Nintendo Switch Online, $50 for the expansion pack, which includes Nintendo Switch Online. For family, it goes from $35 to $80. So
30. Wait, where'd the 35 come from?
For family pack, Nintendo Switch Online only, no expansion pack.
Okay. I got all 4 prices now. Okay, got it.
Yeah. But yeah, Paper Mario is a great game, and now it'll be somewhat convenient to play. I don't know if I'd pay $50 just for Paper Mario, but there it is. We have learned through a publishing announcement that MercurySteam, the creators of Metroid Dread and the Lords of Shadow Castlevania series, is working on a new action RPG with 505 Games, codenamed Project Iron. Now we don't, or Iron.
Iron.
Yeah, well, it's Iron. I just said that word like 5 times in a row for no reason. Anyway, Project Iron from MercurySteam. Now, no real other details known other than like some of the investment numbers. I guess that the IP will be co-owned between MercurySteam and 505 Games. The initial development investment is 25 million euros. We don't know. It's an action RPG. A third-person action RPG set in a dark fantasy world, which is kind of like the widest umbrella the widest net I think you can cast.
And no one's done that before.
Project Salt Iron War.
Salt Iron War. But so MercurySteam, I think of 2 games when I think of them: Lords of Shadow and Metroid Dread. I guess that's because they've also done Samus Returns. They also did like the Mirror of Fate game. I don't know what other projects are under their belt. Based on the description of a dark fantasy world, I would assume like Lords of Shadow, only with stats or damage floaters.
Probably because it's an RPG now.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean like in the Castlevania IP.
Right.
In that
third
game.
person. Yeah.
So I haven't played Dread yet. I do know, or even though it was kind of like much maligned by the general fan base, I feel like I thought Lords of Shadow had some really fun set pieces and some really good art when it didn't decide to be set in like the real world parking lots and garages. When it was set in like fantasy castle, it was good and had some like really. I think it looked really nice. And Metroid Dread was obviously received much better on a gameplay perspective as well. So them working on an action RPG, I kind of think of this as sort of like the Moon Studios from Ori. They're working on an action RPG as well. So these studios that have a pretty good pedigree. I think maybe Moon Studios is better than MercurySteam in general because both Ori games are so well received. But and I guess also Playground Games working on Fable. It's interesting to see these studios kind of branching out and like now they're making RPGs. Now, are they going to be like RPG systems? Like, we've got a skill tree in our action game. It's an RPG now, or is it actually going to be like more go farther than that. I guess that'll.
Is it going to be Guardians of the Galaxy or an RPG?
Hey, Guardians of the Galaxy is. I actually really that's on my list because it had such good word of mouth.
I plan on trying it, but like calling it an RPG is like borderline. Okay, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like Horizon, where even we covered it on our site, but it's really an open world game with some loot systems that is reminiscent of RPG. Is that what this? We don't know any details on this game, so we're speculating at this point what MercurySteam is working on. But
that's what qualifies. Like, as long as the game has like color sorted loot on it, it's automatically RPG to people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it has a number.
If it has damage floaters or tiered loot, it's an RPG. We don't make the rules; we just report on them.
All
right.
This is where we don't decide what's an RPG. That's the world that decides for us. We don't control anything.
Yeah, 505 Games has already said that this is an RPG, and so we're just beholden to their definition, whatever it is.
At the whims of fate.
Yep. Probably be a long time before we see it, but it'll be interesting to see. It'll obviously be a long time before we see it, but it might not be too long before we, get an announcement. I don't know, but just kind of speculation at this point. I'm interested because I've enjoyed Lords of Shadow, and I do have Dread on the list to play.
They'll have 3 factions, and they've are fighting over iron and salt. So the Iron Salt War is about to happen.
You're making me hungry for salt, not iron.
Are you sure?
No.
Don't lie to me.
We did have an additional delay for a game that was supposed to release in just a couple days. Demon's Gaze Extra was originally slated to release on December 9th, so just in a couple days. This is the port of Demon's Gaze that was originally on Vita. It's been delayed a month, so instead of releasing in a couple days, it will instead release on January 6th of next year. So, did anyone here play the original Demon's Gaze on Vita?
I did.
Oh,
pretty neat. Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's a pretty good dungeon crawler. It's actually like, out of all the experience games, it's actually one of the more unique ones in terms of some of its mechanics. I don't think it all lands quite right or quite well, but there's something to be said for just like trying something new and novel. I'm specifically referring to how like the demons work in that game. But
yeah, they're kind of like they're like not formally in your party ish, but they work with you.
It's like having a guest party member at all times that sometimes you sort of have to rely on them, but you don't have full control over them. And I know some people that might just be infuriating, like Persona 3 or whatever, but it's just kind of nice that like sometimes you're just at the whim of what your kind of uncontrollable demon does. So you gotta work around it.
Now they call this an enhanced re-release, but I'm trying to look at the press releases and figure out what does Extra have. I found a few things, including the addition of a high-speed battle function, a retry function, and enhanced autopilot. So it looks like a lot of kind of like gameplay convenience.
Apparently also easier. So the original game was somewhat tough.
And a new job class, category.
Like what is it? I forget.
Machina.
Like machinist. Oh, yeah, Machina. Yeah.
So releasing for Switch and PlayStation 4, I forget if I said that already, next year, early January. Hey, January was pretty sparse when we talk about Q1 of next year. So if they need an extra time Good.
Another somewhat interesting bit about this release is that it's being published by Clouded Leopard Entertainment, which they're like a Chinese-based company, but they sort of have just started dipping their toes into like worldwide English localization. They're doing this. They're doing Relayer, which is coming out in February. So it'll be sort of interesting, like how that works, like how that shapes up. I'm pretty sure, like if you look at the press release for Demon Gaze, it says there is going to be like a package version. It's a little bit like vague. Like, are they talking about like an Asian package version? Are they actually going to be like distributing like a retail game version of this in the US?
I feel like
it seems implausible. Like they're a brand new publisher trying to. No, they're not a new English Western publisher in the West. But yeah, we'll see.
I highly doubt it have to be in retail stores already, like in terms of like being available to pre-order and shit. Like they'd have, there's no way it's getting a physical release in the West, like officially. Maybe like in Southeast Asia thing, but
right.
Just the logistics don't match up if that's already the case.
That's why I brought it up. Just like,
Yeah.
okay.
I think we might have talked about this in passing last week because it was kind of teased on a website, but we got the full announcement today that Another Eden will be having an upcoming collaboration event on December 9th with Chrono Cross, of all things. Now, obviously, this is coming in the same window of time where Chrono Cross has kind of been in the discussion lately due to its presence on the various NVIDIA GeForce leaks and so much rumor mongering about whether a remaster is on the way or even a full-fledged remake on the way. And now, Another Eden, a game that I feel like has kind of gone under the radar since it released on PC earlier this year. Now it's having a collaboration specifically with Chrono Cross, and people seem like they're more eager in that news aspect and what it might be betraying more than the collaboration itself. I don't know. I don't know.
That's what people like. People like something they know.
Wow, I absolutely despise Chrono Cross with a passion, so I'll pass this off. Because the reason I never played Enter Eden because I hated the writer from Chrono Cross, so I just refuse to touch this game. So this collab means absolutely nothing to me.
It means less than nothing.
I love it.
We need more just like fervent antagonism on this podcast. We just say I hate this thing.
Obviously, Another Eden from its conception was a spiritual successor to the Chrono series. It's Masato Kato is the main person behind it in this crossover. He's the writer and director. Yasunori Mitsuda is not like the main composer of the game, but he did the main theme for Another Eden. But he's like he supervises the music of the game. Well, for this collaboration and for a lot of Another Eden's OST, Shunsuke Tsuchiya and Miriam Abunasser. Sorry if I butchered that last name. I apologize, but they're working on the music for this crossover, and they've done tracks for Another Eden as well. It's a really cool because Another Eden is like a fully single player story RPG that just happens to have a gacha system in it because it's free to play game on that originally released on mobile. I played it when it first launched the global version. It's pretty cool. I put like maybe over 40 hours into it, getting to the first part of the story. There's more story expansions. There's like this first arc that takes it's like a fully featured game. And then, of course, because it's an ongoing live service game, they add more and more story and content into it with events. Then the cool thing about Another Eden is that nothing is like limited time only. The only thing that's limited time is like banners, obviously. But for like stuff like new content that they're adding, that's always permanent in the game. Even collabs like the previous collabs with Persona 5 and the Tales of series, those are still available because they're permanent add-ons, and this Chrono Cross collab will be permanent because that's just the way it operates.
Yeah, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, there's no rush to it.
Just a question: what do they do with collab characters that they were trying to get them? Would they be like limited SSR or something?
No, collab characters are not in the gacha at all. You obtain all of them through playing through the events of those. The only thing that's like that will take you time about them is like fully uncapping them because you have to grind materials to fully uncap them. There's like certain skill boards that are open to you that give stats and new skills. But then if you want like higher ranking skill boards, they may require more investment. So like you might need to grind for like materials and in those like events to fully like uncap them. But nothing is gacha about the collab characters. You just get them for free and then invest in them, like invest time into them. There are cool things specific to this collab. All these collabs are called symphonies. They're like siloed off, so like they're like an option you pick in the menu, and then it will warp you to that like content in the game. So for this collab, you will Surge, Kid, and Harl will join you as playable characters, and then you can keep them when they join you into the main game as well. But then there are other Chrono Cross characters that will appear in this collab. They've said that Lynx, Glenn, and Starkey will appear here. For the
I don't remember Starkey at all.
Starkey.
The other five are.
Yeah,
I remember. I don't remember
Starkey's
Starkey.
like the blue-headed thing with the
Yeah, I
antenna.
saw him. But like, there's so many characters in the game that I probably just like benched. I probably got him and benched him and never used them.
Yeah,
Well,
that's how the
there's
game
a lot
is.
of characters in Chrono
Right.
Cross.
It's like 40 something.
I think there's 45 that you can get per playthrough.
There's a shitload.
And Chow hates all of them.
Well, the thing is, they have no screen time or development. So what's the point of adding so many characters?
See, look at this guy. He's toxic.
Like
it needs to have story and plot for all the characters. If they don't have
a single player RPG, okay.
If they don't have
to be clear, I have no problem with that. Like one of my favorite games ever is The Last Remnant, and that game has several characters. You kind of have to like pick and choose which ones you use, and they're not like relevant to the story. But
do you hate Star Ocean 2, by the way?
Well, Star Ocean 2 has like
like
this or that. Oh yeah.
But you can also reject them and not have them join you, and you could beat the whole game with just 2 people.
Do you hate the Suikoden games, huh, Chow?
No, I do not.
Okay, but those have a shitload of characters sometimes.
Yeah, but they don't always join your party. I mean, they could end up in your, in your.
Not all of them have elaborate backstories, Chow. Some of there's like, I'm a fucking chef. I like to make the food.
But is there a chef that you can get in Chrono Cross?
Probably, yeah.
It works at your kitchen?
I think so, actually. Now what, Chow? Fuck you.
Yeah.
I actually don't have like any hard like opinion on Chrono Cross either way. I'm like,
me too. I really like the setting and the atmosphere of Chrono Cross. I think
the music is good.
Yeah, the music is good. I think it's a really ambitious game. I don't think it comes together like all that well gameplay wise, but I think it was a really ambitious game for its time. And I think it's too chained down by people saying, "There's not the Chrono Trigger 2 I wanted." Wah! I'm like, all right, I get it.
It's the Last Jedi of video games, okay?
What the? You need to stop making movie comparisons to your fucking this guy. There are some new features that are exclusive to this another Eden Chrono Cross collab. So it's just going to be available in that Symphony. One is New Game Plus, because how this collab is structured is you either take from the beginning, you either take a Kid or Harl with you, like you make a choice between them, and like the base stories are the same, but there will be different events along the way depending on whether you pick between Kid or Harl. And then so in New Game Plus, you can redo it, and then you can pick the other character and then see the other events with them, like whatever transpires in it. There'll be sub events in this collab, so there'll be some focusing on Chrono Cross characters or like small stories about the town that you visit there. Some of the sub events have special conditions that only occur in like certain branches on it, so there's a certain form of like non-linear storytelling. It's gonna be probably limited in scope, but something nice to have. And some sub events can like they can be replayed on New Game Plus if you want to see the other branching outcome in these sub events. They're also taking some elements from the Chrono Cross battle system and putting it into this collab, like the element system, so you can equip like different elements on Surge, Kid, and Harl to customize their skills. These elements are only obtained in this Symphony. It's not like a new system for the base game. And then obviously as the characters level up, more elements can be equipped onto them, up to 4. So it's taking that aspect of the Chrono Cross's battle system, and they're also, just for the Symphony, they're also including field effects from the Chrono Cross battle system, and these affect like the type of attacks are performed, like the field conditions change in real time, so you can have specific attacks open up when the field effects change. And then these are like your standard elements like fire, water, wind, earth, thunder, shade, and crystal.
I actually do not really remember how like the Chrono Cross element system quite works.
Yeah,
like in Chrono Cross, like I remember there was a little bit of like a tug of war, sort of like stacking elements in some way, but like I just don't remember how it works specifically.
Yeah, I don't remember all the things either. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They do have like some callbacks to Chrono Cross in terms of like special attacks too, like the triple tech attack where the characters stand like in a triangle formation, but have like this summoning circle sort of deal to make their special attacks. Like those types of special attacks will be in like they'll be adapted to another Eden's like another force system, which is like a system in the game where like you freeze time and like deal as many attacks as possible, and then some of them can lead to special attacks. So you can have a combo attack with the Chrono Cross characters there, and it also have a difficulty setting, difficulty settings for this symphony alone. So you can have like from beginner, standard, veteran, expert, and master, and then you'll gain like more experience, money, and resources the higher difficulty it is. So there's a fair amount of like replayability in this like collab. They're really putting forth like a lot of effort into it to call back to Chrono Cross. They'll have like original music from Chrono Cross play at certain time, places in the collab, along with like new tracks specifically made for this collab from the composers Suchiya and Miriam. And I think that covers most of it. In order to like, if people want to try out another Eden to play this, just take note that if you want to play this right away, you have to clear chapter 13 of the main story to like even start gaining access to it, because that's like most of like when the tutorials and the early game stuff like clear up. And then if you really want to like complete like the whole collab, you have to beat part 1 of the story. I don't know how fast it is these days because I took my time with it. It should probably maybe take, I don't know, 15 to 20 hours honestly to clear part 1, because it is a pretty lengthy game. But I might check it out. I keep telling myself I shouldn't do this, but I sort of reinstalled another Eden, and then that got
I
me
sort of did.
Yeah, I sort of did, and
well, you can let me know how the voice acting goes, because this is the first time you get to hear the Chrono Cross characters voiced for the first time. Is it?
Yeah. The Surge, Kid, and Harl are all voiced. So Surge was previously a silent protagonist, and now they have. This is a game that has dual audio, so has English and Japanese voices. For Surge and for the English cast, it's Ashton Frank as Surge, Sheena May as Kid, and Shazia Nichols as Harl.
I don't recognize those names.
Yeah, they
which is always good. New blood's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of new blood in another Eden's dub. Like, there's a lot of voice talent that like I don't recognize, but they're clearly very passionate and enjoy that they have a role in this game. So it's cool that like you'll find a lot of new voice.
And there's also a nice like CG trailer for this collab that like shows a lot of these characters in modern rendering techniques or whatever. So it seems like there's really a lot of kind of almost budget behind it.
For the Japanese voice cast, you have Hiro Shimono as Surge, Megumi Toyoguchi as Kid, and Yukana as Harl. So those are bigger names over there. Very recognizable. But it's gonna start on December 9th. This starts worldwide simultaneously, so both the Japanese and English servers or global servers will get it at the same time. And it seems really cool. Like they're clearly putting a lot of effort behind this collab, because it's so it resonates so strongly with the staff of Another Eden. So that's I don't know. I'll probably try.
And we'll see if it actually leads any credence to whether or not we'll see early next year, or maybe at the Game Awards. Who knows? An announcement of anything relating to Chrono Cross being remastered or whatever the project. I haven't been keeping up with the rumors other than that they're floating around. So
yeah. So who knows? I assume we'll probably hear something sooner than later if it's real.
Speaking of gacha games, actually, I'm not sure this is a gacha game. I remember we talked about this a long time ago once, and I believe Chow played it, and I remember watching either Chow or Josh playing it a little bit. Blazblue, Alternative Dark War.
We talked about it.
I remember us talking about it, but it's been a while, and I also didn't like have any passion for it, so my brain didn't retain it.
Good. That's the right answer.
It either has shut down or will shut down less than a year since it launched. So
yeah, it's shutting down on January 31st next year. It launched on February 16th of this year. So very, very short lifespan for a gacha game. Yes, it does. It is a free-to-play mobile game released in Japan, so there's like a 98% chance it probably has a gacha system. And it does. I did play it for like about a month and a half to 2 months.
The thing is, nobody wanted this game. We wanted a new fighting game, but nobody wanted a gacha game.
I don't know, man. Some BlazBlue diehards are like, this game is fucking. There's everything I want from BlazBlue. There's so much lore and characters, and it's so good.
Wasn't
I
this the game where like half the animations use like bright flashes to like for impacts and hits or whatever?
Yeah.
So
Oh god, I fucking hated that. Yes.
So for whatever reason, the one thing I remember from this game
I think they toned it down in a patch. I think they did, but like it sucked when that was a thing. I was like, I need sunglasses. This is making my eyes hurt.
The legacy of BlazBlue Alternative Dark War. So
yeah. So there's no like follow up to BlazBlue after this. We don't know where BlazBlue is going to be at after this. Who knows? So BlazBlue fans, I'm sorry. The going RPG didn't work out. So goodbye to BlazBlue Alternative Dark War. There's not much else to say. Other than that, they tried their best, but damn, this thing was tanking for months. They tried to like
got that Granblue collab.
They tried to garner interest by like collabing with Granblue, so they have like the main heroine of Granblue, Jita, like in it, and then people were like, okay, great. So, yeah, I mean, the lesson learned, Sorry, Mori, it's not meant to be. Yeah, I was a true BlazBlue fan. I tried to play this game. I was like, all right, I'll give it a chance. And I was like, this game sucks. But
you gave it a long chance, a month and a half.
I know.
You gave it a real try.
I wasn't the top BBW player in the West, unfortunately. I saw some people saying, oh, I played this game. They showed like their accounts and like everything's maxed. Like, I was a real diehard of BlazBlue Dark War. I was the best Western player. I'm like, all right. So yeah. I concede. I'm not the biggest diehard BlazBlue fan. Thank God.
The last bit of news is not specifically about RPGs or even RPG adjacent games. It's just about Sony services in general. And this is a report out of Bloomberg, so not officially announced by Sony. And then, of course, the Bloomberg report has been other people that have inside knowledge have been kind of like teasing what they know or might know. And that is basically a potential competitor to Microsoft's Game Pass subscription service. So obviously, Sony already has PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now. According to Bloomberg's report, this new subscription service would essentially be a 3-tier service that effectively combines those current offerings. It's codenamed as Spartacus, and the 3 tiers, according to Bloomberg, are as follows. The first tier would basically be the existing PlayStation Plus. The second tier would also, on top of that, offer a large catalog of PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games, so basically like an instant library. Now, this is the thing that people have really been latching on to, and that is a third tier that would add game streaming and a library of classic PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and PSP games. So we had a pretty big hoopla earlier about those games no longer being accessible as those services kind of shut down, and eventually there was they U-turned on some of those decisions, but a lot of those games still are kind of tied to those hardware and are not conveniently playable on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5. So this new service would seem to address that. The one caveat, though, is that this potential competitor to Game Pass would likely, according to Jason Schreier, not offer Game 1 new titles in the way that Game Pass does if they're Microsoft published.
Day one new titles, yeah.
Yeah, but it just seems kind of like PlayStation Now, PlayStation Plus. So kind of their existing services kind of rebranded. PlayStation likes to rebrand their stuff, I feel like, into kind of a new paradigm to sort of more closely align it with what Game Pass offers. And based on, obviously, I don't know the dollars offhand or the number of subscribers, but Game Pass, I know, has been made quite a splash in terms of the amount of users that it's had, and at least the amount of discussion that it generates. And so I don't think that this is entirely unexpected, that they would try to counter it in some way. And obviously these details are, again, according to Bloomberg, not from the horse's mouth. So take them all with a grain of salt in terms of the actual tiering and what each tier will offer. And we don't know any details on pricing or things like that.
Depending on the game library that they offer, I'll fucking do third tier right away. Fuck it, man. But it better be a damn good offering for out of the gate, because there's a lot of damn good games on throughout the PlayStation. The only Sony devices: PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and PSP. Nothing else has ever come out of PlayStation.
Oh, by the way, in the Bloomberg report, it says documents reviewed by Bloomberg suggest that Sony plans to retain the PlayStation Plus branding but phase out PlayStation Now, which I think makes sense because I think PlayStation Plus people have kind of latched onto, and PlayStation Now kind of has a stigma against it, whether fair or not. So I think that makes sense. But again, not formally announced.
Well, what happened is is Vita just the invisible person now? It's like we don't see you.
Hey,
Who are you?
I want to tell you a small story. So I went to a movie theater yesterday, first time since the before times of the pandemic.
What were you watching? What were you watching?
Dune.
Okay.
So I don't watch a lot of movies, but a few coworkers wanted to go see it, and I said, sure, why not? The theater was mostly empty, so I felt safe, and I had my mask, and I socially distanced, all that. And in the lobby, they had like these old arcade systems, like those machines, like grab machines, only they were little like cards that you would then turn in. And in those, there were I could have won a PlayStation Vita or a Nintendo DS XL. So this is like I feel like I traveled back in time a decade or whatever. And then also, this is my favorite one, an iPod Shuffle. Like the ones that clip on, like that don't have a screen. So I'm like, they did have a Nintendo Switch also. So it's like, it wasn't completely outdated stuff. I'm like, a Nintendo Switch, a Vita, a DSi XL, and an iPod Shuffle. I could have won.
So sick, man. I would have tried to get a DSi XL or the Vita.
Yeah, I don't know. So that story had no point to it, but I was like, oh yeah, the Vita. What a chip. Still making
not in Sony's eyes.
Yeah, apparently not in Sony's eyes, but I don't know. This seems smart. This seems good. It'll be interesting to see how the actual offering lines out once they formally, give us details.
I hope they allow for local game downloads. I don't want everything to be tied to game streaming. I think that's the my one main concern is like I'm not comfortable in leaving everything, paying for a service just to gain access via streaming.
Well, I remember PlayStation Now does support some local game downloads. I don't know the details because I've never used it myself, but I remember that's kind of been part of it.
Yeah, they eventually added that. It wasn't like it wasn't there out of the gate, but
I remember I believe it was Kyle Orland who what does he write for again? I can figure this out.
Ars Technica.
I remember he had some sort of poll where he's like, did you know that PlayStation Now can support game downloads and not just streaming? And most people didn't, the majority. So I think that's a communication error and like the kind of like a first impression that they could never quite wash off of PlayStation Now. So if that just leads more credence to trying to drop that branding and try to fold it into PlayStation Plus.
That should be like a dedicated bullet point with like visuals.
Yeah. Yeah. PlayStation Plus, you own these games on your console, and even like these, what was previously streaming only, you can own whatever the offering ends up being. So
you can download you can download any of these games locally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be the way to go.
Yeah, Chrono Cross.
That's your Chrono Cross remastered right there. It's the PlayStation
Now version, the PlayStation Plus new tier 3 option.
Yeah,
I guess.
Man, this has a lot of potential. I don't know if they're gonna get there, but I sure hope they do.
Yep,
that'd be amazing to like play just like these games on a modern console without having to go through the hassle of either digging out old hardware or resorting to like emulation.
Well, we when you Adam and Kite kind of put together those lists of all the RPGs that were on those systems that you would be able to still play but no longer download. Like there's a lot of gems in there, even just on the RPG front, ignoring other genres. So even if they make a fraction of those available, that would be to play on PlayStation 4 or 5.
I do wonder also, like, because there'll be region differences, right? Like how Nintendo Switch Online does it. Like
that's a good point.
There'll be different catalogs per region, I imagine. Which hopefully it's one of those things that's like it's still easily accessible, like how Nintendo Switch is as long as you have an active Switch Online account, you can still access any of the regions, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, if it does have different catalogs per region, which I imagine it'll be easily accessible. It's not like, oh, you need to have like a different subscription to for this account to access that. So if they're gonna go that route, please make it just easily accessible for one account, even if it's just like Switch user on the PlayStation 4 or 5.
And that kind of covers us for news for the for the week. So wrapping up some final thoughts, I'm glad we were able to squeeze in Final Fantasy V discussion, a few other games that'll probably show up once we finally get to talking about Game of the Year stuff, some of the outside of RPG specific space, like new Amazon shows on Mass Effect and the Sony new subscription service being reported on, as well as obviously more releases and release dates and ports coming out to look forward to early next year. All the features that we talked about, including the Ruined King review, the Mass Effect TV show opinion piece, and Adam's Final Fantasy V guide, of which there are also, Adam did the full walkthrough, but there's also like a Blue Mage glossary, some boss strategies. We have a whole bunch of guides on the site for Final Fantasy V Pixel Remaster, as well as 4 and the others. So those are all up there as well as all the news we covered. You can find all that information on rpgsite.net. We also have our social media channels on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can join our Discord at discord.gg/RPGsite if you want to discuss any of the games that we've been talking about. You can also get to the Discord by hitting the link at the top of our homepage. And we will record one more regular episode of the Tetracast this year, next week. If anything comes out of the Game Awards, we will give our thoughts on that, as well as one final wrap up before we get into our end of year deliberations and where those end up. Until next time, stay safe, take care. We'll talk to you then.
Radical Dreamers.
The better game.